Okay, this video is going to be a review of parts of speech. And the main question is, why do we need parts of speech? Why is it important to know what these are? Everybody knows the definition of the parts of speech, but the key is to be able to recognize the different types of words in your own sentences. That will help you write really strong sentences and avoid a lot of grammar errors such as comma mistakes and comma splices and run-ons and fragments. And those are big errors to worry about. So let's go into it. The first thing we want to talk about are nouns. And everybody knows nouns are people, they're places, they're things, and they're also concepts such as love, anger, confusion, happiness. These are all examples of nouns. The key is to be able to identify the nouns in your sentences. That's what's going to help you the most. Then we have pronouns. Pronouns take the place of nouns so that you don't have to repeat yourself all the time. So we get Zeke bought the book and Zeke put the book on the table, or Zeke bought the book and he put it on the table. So he is Zeke and it is the book. Easy peasy. These are subject pronouns, Zeke, because the subject of the sentence does the action. So the action is buy or bought, right? Zeke did the action. What did he do it to? The book, and that would be the object pronoun. So what received the action of being bought? The book. He did the buying, Zeke. So when you're using subject pronouns, you use these, and when you're using object pronouns, you use these. And these are all considered personal pronouns. We also have possessive pronouns that indicate ownership, like its book or his book. So those are pronouns that replace nouns. Verbs. Everybody knows that verbs are actions in sentences. But sometimes our verbs can act as nouns, so that text can be a noun too. You can send a text, which is a noun, a thing, or you can text your friend, which is a verb. So you have to be a little careful with that. Then we have our helping verbs. These are some that people aren't often aware of. So they help form tenses, and tenses are our time frame. That's how we indicate things that are happening now or happening in the past, or they will happen in the future. And then we have helping verbs that change the mood, and these are some of the helping verbs that change mood. The third type of verb is a state of being verb, and those are the verbs that describe rather than act, so they're not actions. So seem, appear, be, or look. This is so you can look tired, that's a state of being, but if you say look, that's going to be an action. So you have to kind of pay attention to these things and how words are used in sentences. So let's look at the helping verbs a little bit more. They help form tenses, which are a time frame. The three most common are be, have, and do. Be, if everybody could learn that the verb be is actually am, are, is, was, and were, they help form tenses. Have also helps form tenses, and do makes sentences negative or ask questions. We use do. Okay? So these are our helping verbs to form tenses. Then we have our helping verbs for modals, or to change the mood. So it's very different to say they go to the library or they do not go to the library with no modal, and they might go to the library, or they may go to the library. So these are all different ways that the meaning of the verb is completely changed by adding in one of these modal verbs. Prepositions. So prepositions tell us where something is or when something happened. And we use a lot of prepositions. So they can say where, on, in, next, or when. And they're usually part of a prepositional phrase that describes another part of the sentence. If you could recognize prepositional phrases, you would never make another comma error. Well, you would make many fewer comma errors than you do now. So the prepositional phrase describes another word or phrase. It always begins with a preposition and it always ends with a noun. So if we get Zeke puts the book on the table, this is location, and we have the preposition on, and then it ends with the noun table, and there's an article in between. So on the table is the prepositional phrase. They can be anywhere in the sentence, and there can be many or there can be none. It helps make writing interesting, but overuse makes it tedious. There's a trick to it. Okay, so here's a list of the most common prepositions, and if you could become familiar with this list of words, again, it would help you identify prepositional phrases, and it would help you identify where to put commas and where not to put commas. And commas are a big problem in student writing. Next thing is adjectives. Most of you probably know that they modify or they add information or they describe nouns and pronouns. So we get the happy students, we get the intelligent and hardworking students, but then we get the challenging essay. Essay is a noun, right? It's a thing, but it's now being used to describe assignment. So this is the noun, and this is actually a noun that's acting as an adjective, okay? So you have to pay attention to how words are used in sentences. And here's a whole bunch. We have the kitchen sink, the living room table, the English professor, the math professor, and so on. All of these are typically nouns that are being used as bonifiers or adjective nouns. All right, now come the adverbs, and these are really the hard ones, or in some cases the most challenging. They describe verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. So adjectives are kind of easy because they just describe nouns, and nouns are usually just things, and verbs we've already identified. But these can operate in a sentence in numerous ways, so they can be a little tricky. But one thing that makes them easier is that they often end in ly. So we have happy, which is an adjective, and then we get happily, which is the adverb. So here's our ly ending. Same thing with quick and quickly. So we can have something like the extremely kind professor. Kind is an adjective describing the noun professor. Extremely is the adverb describing how kind professor is. That professor isn't just kind, that professor is extremely kind. Okay? So the students wrote very carefully. Carefully, ly, describes how the students wrote carefully. And very modifies carefully also. How carefully did the students write? Very. Do you see how that works? Okay, moving on. Here's a little practice for you. So here's a paragraph and another paragraph. See if you can find the verbs, nouns, pronouns, and prepositional phrases in these two paragraphs. So take your time with it, and then after you have looked at this, you can pause the recording, and then you will find the answers here. All color-coded to match the colors that I've used in this presentation. Good luck, and if you have any questions, be sure to ask.